Hello, my name is James McLachlan, editor of Car Design News, and welcome to the Car Design News headquarters in London for the first in a series of quarterly broadcasts called Car Design in Review, where we look at what's happened, what's coming up in the world of automotive design. And I'm joined by my trusty assistant, Freddie Holmes.
Hello, James.
Nice to see you, Freddie. And I'm going to ask you first to cast your mind back to January and the CES show, which is a technology show in Las Vegas, which is also features very prominently on the automotive design calendar. What do we see at CES, Freddie?
Oh, we saw lots of shuttles, didn't we?
We did.
Our man on the ground was Mark Smythe. He put together a nice little roundup of some of the shuttles on display. A lot of them were quite boxy, but there were a couple that stood out to us. One of those was designed by sort of in collaboration between Pininfarina and Benteler Group.
Mm-hmm.
All of these are pretty boxy, pretty asymmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, one of the ones that stood out to us is actually part of a wider system, which was interesting.
This is the Ital Design.
It's the Ital Design one, yeah. So it's kind of the shuttle integrates within the home itself. You've got a lift that takes you from the shuttle into your living room.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of sounds like the ideal situation, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But there also an interesting one for us was the Zeekr. Now stand by, it's a catchy name. The Zeekr Seer M times Waymo. Which incidentally is actually almost, in my eyes anyway, almost identical to the Chrysler Pacifica, but maybe let's not look too deeply into that. And I guess when we were looking at the shuttles, that prompted us to look back at the archives on some of the attempts at autonomous shuttles of the past.
Yeah, we had a rummage around. We've got as you know, on Car Design, we've got an extensive concept car archive, which I encourage you to have a rummage around in, as we do from time to time. But yeah, we dug out the 1956 GM Firebird Part 2, or the second, for the very famous Motorama show, which was it was a very, very outlandish attempt to envision what autonomous driving, if that's not a contradiction in terms, would look like. Obviously, it looked a bit like a spaceship or rocket ship, because this was the beginning of the jet age.
And it was still stuck in the sort of the bubble era as well. So it was a domed roof, and the interior was, it just looked like a normal car in a way, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. If normal, yeah, I say ish. I did actually see it at the at Norman Foster's Autos design show in Bilbao. It's an astonishing looking thing, but yes, very, very, very science fiction-y. But we also, I mean, there are a few now. It's being looked at in serious ways by many OEMs. We've got Lincoln L100, the Cadillac Innerspace, pick your sphere, the Audis.
Well, yeah, there's four of them, so you've got plenty there. You've got the urban sphere, the grand sphere, active sphere, and the sky sphere. I think for me, the active sphere is probably the standout of the bunch. It's sort of the pickup / SUV / whatever else.
Whatever it is, I think that's the final. We've had our full of spheres. I don't know that Audi are going to be doing anymore. We did the last one that featured in Interior Motives, which is out at the moment, which I encourage you to grab a copy of.
But one of the trends that you'll see at CES is obviously autonomous driving. Part of that is AI helping to drive the car so it can steer itself. It also seems like AI might help to design the car as well. So we've had a bit of a dig into that.
If the doomsayers are to be believed, and artificial intelligence will replace designers, I don't quite believe it. But we did in commission our North American correspondent Carl Smith to take a look at AI in design, and he wrote a very, very lovely piece. Not only did he write the piece, but he actually used Midjourney, which is a AI algorithmic system of a creative tool, and he created the imagery to go with the piece. But as he said in his piece, programs are at an early stage at the moment. I suppose one of the things it does allow you to do, and Carl flagged this up, as he's an architect. He's not a car designer,
and yet you'd never tell from the images he put together.
Yeah,
which kind of highlights the power of AI. Harness it for good or evil.
Yes. I'm sure Carl was harnessing it for good, but yeah, it's I think also the speed at which it can iterate is incredible, but you do need to know what to tell it, because it can come up. We've seen all sorts of experiments that just look god awful, quite frankly. But one of the main takeaways from Carl's piece, and I think this is really interesting, is the changing nature of the designer themselves. He flagged this up at the end of the piece, where he said the changing nature of the designer needed a broader skill set. He referenced a really interesting figure from history that we all know, Harley Earl, who was obviously the man behind the Buick Y Job and the first ever concept car, but not
known as a sketcher.
Exactly, not known as a sketcher, not known for rendering. And so you do have to wonder whether, how this advent of AI plays out. Taps into a recent appointment for Volvo.
Yeah, it took us by surprise a little bit. Jeremy Offer moved over from CV, commercial vehicle startup Arrival. He's also got more of a background, I guess, in industrial design, product design. If I could sort of air quote, not really a car guy.
Please don't air quote.
It's happened. But yeah, that was an appointment that sort of signalled maybe a change in trends. You don't have to come from exterior design or interior design,
recently interior design,
or even from the sort of traditional car world in a way.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the changing nature of the industry, I suppose it is service people who are experts in service design. I mean, I don't imagine that Jeremy is going to be sketching, but he will be in charge of people who are doing that sort of thing. But maybe it's a kind of shift in the sort of the remit, I suppose, of OEMs.
I believe Volvo's CEO actually came from Dyson. Am I?
Yes, yes. This is true. Which I suppose, when you start joining the dots, it makes sense that this would be the time, perhaps, not to hire. I'm going to air quote now, a car guy. Sorry, you started it. Anyway, we did. We're sticking with the AI because we do think it's a hot topic at the moment. We've been speaking to a couple of designers about their take on it. One of the people that's caught our eye was Ahab, who was, well, I should say, he was head of exterior and interior design for Ford Trucks, but he is no longer. He's on the process of moving on there. But he's been doing a lot of experiments, Ahab on social media with the AI technology, and you can see over the last few months the evolution of some of his work. It was very, very not particularly plausible in terms of what is a car, what we understand as a car, but it's become much more recognizable. So we grabbed Ahab for a quick chat. Well, I did, and I started by asking him what prompted some of these trials.
I'm always looking for features or softwares that would make our work stream more efficient. And it's funny, when I started this, it was around maybe October of last year, 2022. And I didn't know much about it, but kind of like started exploring on the internet and came across a bunch of platforms. So I started using them, subscribed to some of them, and started using them. What's amazing is how fast this stuff is improving. Within just a few months, when I first started, you get these weird convoluted things that you cannot use. But you look at my latest posts, it's stuff that you can actually use. It's amazing.
Yeah, I saw you at CCS in Detroit earlier this year.
Yes.
You just finished a lecture, actually, talking to the students, but you showed me some of those early iterations, and they look completely crazy, like not really cars in the sense that we would understand them or even are usable. But now, obviously the evolution has been such that they now look very much like how you'd expect a car to look. Now, can you unpack a little bit about that evolution? Have you just got better using the tool, better at telling it what to do, trial and error, I guess?
I think the machine or the learning, the intelligence of the machine is just moving at a very fast rate. When I first started in the design world, at Ford Motor Company, it was back in 1993 when we used to use pen and paper, and we only had two machines, paint boxes, and the reason we only had two machines at the design center at Ford was each machine was like $100,000,
right?
And it just did drawings, and you can do renderings on it. Today on my iPad, I have a couple of apps that do a lot more than those two machines ever did, for only a few bucks a month. And now with the AI and simply given the computer a verbal prompt, it begins to give you something that is, that you can use, that's worthwhile.
But what does this mean? Because this is now, if you can iterate at such a rapid rate, what is this going to mean for designers now and in the very near future?
I think the reality is no one can replace the human brain. I don't think these platforms will ever replace designers per se. I think what it means for new designers or up-and-coming designers is they have to become much more proficient in how they use these platforms and machines. I think they're here to stay. Mm-hmm. They're only going to get better. I am already looking at some of the platforms out there where on the one side of the screen you're drawing, and on the other side of the screen it's interpreting your drawing in 3-dimensional. Mm. In data that you can turn, and eventually at some point you can send to a machine and actually have your vision milled on a clay model or a rapid prototype or whatever. So it is here to stay. It will make our life easier. And I think especially for designers, I think we just, there are things that are always coming at us. We need to embrace and see how it makes us better designers.
Right. So you don't see it as necessarily an existential threat to the future of the designer?
No. I don't think so. And the reality is, really, if you look at these platforms, they do the legwork for you.
Right.
So you're, rather than you searching the internet for inspiration, it kind of does it for you and kind of hands it to you on a silver platter.
So does that mean then it becomes much more about a process of elimination?
Yeah, and this is why I don't think it's a threat, because we as designers, we have a sense of, we have an eye for aesthetics, we have an eye for proportions. So having a machine like that, we are in a way editors as well. You may look at a sketch and you see several designs. You don't need to put every design on the actual product, but we do need to be editors in a way to understand, to take what's good and build upon it, rather than taking everything and pile it into one product.
And obviously a lot of these experiments that you've been putting up on your LinkedIn profile are sort of kind of pet projects, personal projects in a way. But what does it mean for Ford? Are you guys looking at growing an AI department, or how is Ford using these these design tools at
You
this
know,
point?
it's so brand new that you know we're you know, I'm very sure every company is kind of feeling its way around it,
Mm-hmm.
and how to use it, and how to make your process more efficient in a way. And that's really where everything is at, and just the fact that I am teaching something like this at College for Creative Studies, you know, there is it is here to stay. So how do we embrace this? Yeah, and it's only the beginning. Think about this. I mean, we have all of these softwares that allow you to test the vehicle, you know, for aerodynamics or the structural worthiness of what you have done. Can you imagine now if you integrate all of that stuff within a platform, and of course that's not going to be like overnight. It will take some years, but you know, within a few days, you know, you have looked into all of that, and you have a vehicle that's almost ready to be produced.
Yeah, that's a great discussion with Ahab there, James, and I'm interested to get your take on this. I mean, you were there. What were the main things that stood out to you from the conversation?
Well, I think obviously Ahab highlighted there that designers, this stuff isn't going away, and designers are going to have to get much more proficient in using these tools. There's no surprise to say that they will improve over time, and designers historically have had to get used to new technology and embrace it, because if not, they will be left behind. One of the positive aspects was the fact that these algorithms can do a lot of work for you. They, as you said, hand it to you on a silver platter, which I quite like the imagery of that phrase. But yeah, his conclusion, not a threat, because designers have an eye for aesthetics, and you can't teach a machine that.
You need to have a human sign off, really, don't you?
I think so, and it does tap into a conversation I had with Max Missoni, which is on a podcast on the website at the moment, where he was saying that at the moment Polestar are just they're waiting it out, but yeah, designers, people will be able to pick up. It's like those special effects in a monster movie, in which you can see the joins. People will pick up when something's designed by a machine, and they can sense the human element when it's there. His parting shot, as it were, about the idea that AI could become not just looking about looks, but about all sorts of processes in the car, about safety, about weight, about the process of making a car. I mean, we're way off yet, but that could be something that really is worth keeping tabs on.
Yeah, because at the moment AI has sort of been viewed through a lens of aesthetics alone, really, isn't it? But yeah, I did think that was interesting. And following on from that, I had a chat myself, believe it or not. Ahab is, I know. So Ahab's sort of in the trade now, as it were. He's a current car designer at an OEM.
Yes.
I spoke to Mike Jelinek. Many people watching this have probably heard of him or met him. He's helping to train the next generation of designers. He's doing these amazing workshops. You may have seen
incredible artwork as well. Actually,
yeah. He's a bit of an advocate for sort of using the whole body, as it were, for sketching, not just sort of sketching on paper, but really sort of moving around. It's almost like a dance class in a way, I think. But
I'd like to see you attend one of those classes.
Yeah, that'll be on the next show. He's also been looking into AI, so I caught up with him to get his take on everything that's going on. And I started off by asking him, is AI something that designers are using now, realistically, in practice, or is this something that's come along in future?
It's definitely here. And you mentioned that it's with us already for some time, so it shouldn't be surprised that a lot of designers and even studios are either already using it or they're trying to implement the AI as a tool in their production pipeline. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we will see growing importance of the AI in the process in the future, but it is already here. I started my career as a designer, as a component designer at Skoda, which is almost 25 years ago. And I remember that everyone was forecasting that the future will be purely 3D. And damn, it's not. We still maintain clay models. We still maintain raw sketching, creating illustrations by hand. And it doesn't really matter if you use Photoshop or Studio Paint or whatever. It's all about that kind of a manual physical interaction with the medium, the way we think through creations physically. So we've been there, and I'm pretty sure that we will see the pattern to repeat again.
And you mentioned quite a few different fields of design there: clay modelers, digital modelers, sketchers, interior designers, CMF leads. Do you think that in future we're going to see a dedicated AI modeler, or is it a case of AI affecting all of those design fields in some way?
That's a great question. That's really great questions, because it really questions the whole car design industry in terms of managing the teams and identifying roles and responsibilities. Obviously, every car designer, every designer, every creative person has a little bit of the ego, and we want to control the full process. We want to be, concept designers, artists, modelers, even manufacturers, that just to have this kind of ultimate creative control. But in terms of a car being such a complex product, complex thing to create and design, it really makes sense to split those roles. In terms of our cognitive abilities, we are pretty limited. And at the same time, we're social beings. So being in a community, being in a team, somehow multiplies our ability for, cognition and creative cognition especially. That means once we are dealing with a specific problem, we can use the knowledge and the experiences of other team members. So the scenario, as you suggested, to split different roles, the AI roles as well, is feasible. It is quite possible that it will happen like that. And I like that, because it gives us, again, a room to grow specific skills and specific experiences through specific knowledge through this specific experience.
How should we view this? Should we see this as, another tool in the toolbox? Should we be scared of it? Should we be curious about it?
I guess all of it, because it is promising. It's an opportunity to innovate, transform the way we create, to push us to another level. But at the same time, it's pretty easy to imagine that we can get controlled by it as well. Once we saw the deployment of 3D modeling, 3D digital modeling in the process, suddenly the form language, the creativity in general has somehow declined. We hit somehow some kind of a plateau, and almost all of the cars and interiors, they were almost identical, and we couldn't see kind of that kind of experimental or adventurous approach to design like a decade before. And it took like 5 or 8 years to get these tools under control again. And right now, when I see young designers using not just Alias as a modeling tool, but things like Blender, including polygonal modeling or VR modeling in their creative pipeline, you see how much the design has been impacted by it itself as well. So yeah, it is really both or all of the angles you mentioned, and we need to be scared and careful. But at the same time, it's nothing wrong to get excited about it.
When does AI come into the design process then? I assume it's more at the start rather than at the end, around the sort of the ideation process.
Which is a shame, isn't it? We all wanted to get rid of all of the the time consuming and difficult tasks like precision modeling and modeling for manufacturing and so on. So this is it's sad that we are not there, and it replaces probably the most enjoyable part of the creative process, the ideation process. However, it is so tempting to follow this kind of a lazy path again. And I saw a number of the fascinating images being populating internet over the last few weeks using the latest Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion models. And you see, how would the Lamborghini school bus would look like? And they're all amazing. But somehow they miss the kind of the uniqueness. They are predictable in a way. And that's why I think that it is just temporary. And those tools, they may already have a good impact on the car design industry or on the humanity in general as an incredible reflection of our own cultural history. But we need to be careful to not miss it. And I think in many cases, we will see that the using AI will transform us, and probably the designers and creative people will be the first one in the forefront going through that kind of challenge. So,
what does all this mean for design directors then, Mike? Is this something that, you know, they're quite sort of hesitant to say that they're looking at? Are they getting AI teams sort of built behind the curtain? Can they afford to ignore AI, I guess, at this point?
No, they can't. And here's the thing, and that's interesting. As part of my academic journey, I'm also delivering some creative workshops at the university level, usually the master degree students, and I already see that even their instructors they are kind of not forcing but encouraging young designers, students to use AI in the process. At the same time, I can't name the brands. I'm in touch already, but we are discussing with multiple brands, mainly in Europe right now, about the use of AI in the process and how we can manage it. But also there are multiple aspects. The ethical aspect is a big topic as well. But in the end, it's all about implementing the AI in the process. But with that comes an even more important question. And again, a couple of the brands that I work with, they're already requesting somehow consulting or maybe the analysis, how we can formalize the ideation process. How can we implement it into the existing design pipeline and allow the managers to step in, to be involved in those early phases of the design process? And for me, this is really the fascinating topic because it illustrates how the design industry is already changing. And in the end, it's their own preference. How do they want to manage their teams? How far they want to go? But they are playing at the same playground, all of them, and they need to be competitive. So even if they say we are not using, 3D AI or VR, we are just going fully traditional classical, they're competing with the others they do. So subconsciously and inevitably, they are already in there because they're competing with the teams they're using AI. So it is already influencing the whole industry.
Will AI replace designers? Will it supplement their work? Or will it fade into nothingness and have no impact at all? Is it a fad? What's your view?
No, AI won't replace designers, creatives. We will see a change in the roles, in the professions probably, because we will need a different skill set to start a profession like that. It will be different than it was 20 years ago, but that's normal. It's not a surprise. Is it going to disappear? In a way, yes, it will be still there, but it will be somehow less manifested in terms of how we experience it right now. It's going to be more hidden in the tools, and I think that that's perfectly fine because in the end, it's just a tool, and it's up to us to make a choice. Do we want to control the tool, or do we want the tool to control us?
Okay, fascinating stuff from Mike there, as ever. Freddie, what do you take away from that interview now that the dust has settled, as it were?
Yeah, well, quite a lot. That was obviously a condensed version of it. It's a very illuminating chat. He was particularly keen to say that, okay, let's approach AI with curiosity. We can be scared of it, but also there's nothing wrong with being excited by it. We sort of immediately view it through a negative lens of taking up jobs, but quite sort of slow to imagine how could it make the job of a designer easier. Part of that is replacing some of the boring stuff you spoke about, with Ahab doing some of the heavy lifting for the designer, probably the parts of the job that maybe they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. Mike suggested actually that AI replaces the most fun part of the job, the ideation phase, which was interesting.
Yeah, that would be a worst case scenario.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, it's sort of the doomsday scenario in a way. But again, he's of a similar train of thought that designers aren't going to be replaced. It's just the role of the designer will change slightly. They'll have more tools in the toolbox.
Well, that's AI. Let's move on because, quite frankly,
we're sick of it.
Yeah. What else has been going on in the world of car design? There's been quite a few quite an active sort of jobs market, I'd say, the last few months.
I'm not sure if it's new year, new me, but January to now, it's just been a bit of a whirlwind of job changes, really. So I won't bore you and list them off now, but a lot of those have fallen under the VW group. I'm sure we've seen that Klaus Sikora has moved on. Michael Mauer is coming back for a second stint. We've also seen Joseph Caban, who has sort of shuffled into more of a mobility-focused role, with Andreas Mintz coming over from Bentley to lead the car design business.
Ton of VW moves.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Who else is at it?
Well, probably too many to list, to be honest, but there's a bit of a shift around at NIO as well. I mean, it's not going to surprise anyone to see a shuffle of chairs at an EV startup. That sort of
goes with the territory, really, doesn't it?
But yeah, we saw Alistair Whelan's off to a new name, 47. We don't know too much about it yet, but it's another EV startup. Bit of a crowded market there.
Well, it certainly feels that way.
That was quite a brief stint for Alistair as well, but he's not been replaced, but NIO's added in another exterior designer in Adil Ben Wadi. I'm pronouncing that right.
I think
Adil,
that's pretty good.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, there's been a bit of a shift around. Just looping back to VW, we should probably say that we saw the stocky little EV concept they put forward as well.
We did. And what else? There's been Project Thunderball, which I absolutely love the name of that.
It's not a Bond film.
Although Roger Moore is the best Bond.
I'll
just throw that out there.
We'll debate that after.
Okay.
So they very kindly invited us out to Dusseldorf. You might know the Wiesmann name from sports cars of the early noughties. Back then, they had BMW straight 6s and V8s, and I believe a V10, which is
monstrous engines.
Kind of mad, really. But they were showing off a new electric version. It looks pretty staggering, actually, in the flesh. The interior is a work of art. So hats off to Andreas Kurbos and the team there behind it.
In fact, when I think about it, you've been all over the place. Where have you been?
Yeah.
Where else have you been?
Well, I was actually back in Dusseldorf a few days later for the Ford Explorer launch. That was obviously embargoed, but that's lifted, and we were able to share shots of that.
That was a really chunky sort of channeling its own sort of, the American aesthetic.
Well, you bang on. That's exactly what it was going for. It's part of the sort of a broader shift within Ford to go back to its roots. It's a US brand, it's in Europe, but it wants to stick true to its roots. I spoke to Amco Leenarts, and he was very keen to say, we produced the Mustang, we need to go back to producing exciting cars. Showed me a lineup of its old portfolio, which is sort of a 12, 13 cars in a row that are all fairly similar shapes and sizes and colours. So they're keen to inject a bit of incitement.
No, good for them. Elsewhere, Munro's in court with Bollinger of a row over who owns the design. We've got a little report on that. Bollinger were going to speak to us, but decided not to. Understandable, given the court case is running in New York.
And we're not the usual outlet for sort of legal disputes, are we?
No.
We'll stay on our lane.
And we're finally starting to see sort of the results of Lancia's revival. It's been a long time coming. It's fair to say that brand has been almost dormant, actually, over the last few years. But we saw an EV concept come out of from Lancia.
It's been sort of teasing us, drip feeding these really abstract shots of the concept, and even a sort of a sculpture that didn't really tell us too much. But the latest shots, the graphics that have come out do show us the rear 3/4. We can see circle headlights, tail lights, which I'm sure you're a fan of.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
As a child of the 80s, so
sadly.
But yeah, it's nice to see sort of strains of the Stratos. They also name checked the Beta HPE.
Yes.
No,
probably not quite as high profile, but still. I mean, if you look at the pedigree of that brand is actually very, very strong. We also saw some production cars come out. Kia's EV9, which features interior motives this month. First under the sort of auspices of Karim Habib.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
And Tata have been busy too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this. The Sierra. This is a name that actually stems back, I think, to the 80s, maybe even further. It was seen as sort of I think it was once described as a spaceship at the time. So it's nice to see that name come back.
Yeah. Although it had connotations for me, the Ford Sierra, which also was quite spaceshipy for the day because it came off the back of the
Very
boxy,
different looking car, though.
Yes. Well, yeah. And Nissan has got another one of their Out series. This one is the Max Out. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. It was inspired by a hairdryer, that name. It's a little Simpsons quote for you there, James. I know you enjoyed that.
Just didn't think you had it in you.
And James, you've just come back from the Black Polo Neck convention in Gothenburg. I didn't get my invite, but how was it?
It was, yes, I went to see Max Missoni at Polestar. We had a kind of black roll neck off, as you might expect. Went to see the Polestar's new studio, but really to talk about Max's inspiration beyond the world of automotive design. So we spoke a lot about art and his background as coming from a family of architects. You can see that in his interest in abstract art and some of the Polestar designs, but also in some of the artwork that he's chosen for the walls. It's an old building listed of a former Volvo headquarters, which has tempered somewhat the Polestar aesthetic, which can be seen by Max's own admission actually as being a little bit cold, but it works very, very well. They thread those two things together extremely well.
A bit of a clash there as well, because I believe it was Volvo trucks as well, wasn't it?
Yes.
From sort of heavy duty trucks
to sleek EVs. Yeah. But yeah, no, really, really interesting to see Max. There's a podcast online and an article about the conversation we had. So that's what's happened, Freddie. What's coming up?
Well, we've been hard at work, beavering away, putting together the next issue of Interior Motives, which is out now, may I add. Do you want to talk us through some of the features we've got on there?
Yes, I'm so pleased you asked. Yes, we're very interested in this idea of cross-disciplinary collaborations. We've got an extensive piece looking at the worlds of fashion and car and that crossover with work from Iris van Herpen and her work for Rolls-Royce for the Cinetopia, and the late Virgil Abloh's work with Mercedes. And this is all going to feed into our Milan Designers Night at the Milan Design Week in April, which we encourage you to get registered to come to, because this will form one of the main themes of that panel discussion and night we're having.
We should say that on the day we're recording this, tickets are running a bit thin. So
yes, they are. So get them.
Get them while they're there, while it's hot.
And and later in the year, People Awards is going to return. We're very excited about that. New judges, new judging criteria.
But we're back at the same venue.
And we're back at the Londoner in Leicester Square, which was tremendously fun. For those of you who attended, we hope to welcome you back. For those who didn't, we hope to welcome you for the first time. It was a tremendous event celebrating the people behind the design, hence the CDN People Awards. And we've also got a live stream coming up, Freddie, quite acronym heavy. Care to unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah. How does the move to EV impact CMF? And that's hosted by UF, which is Ultra Fabrics, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, no, that's going to be really interesting. We've got a great panel lined up for you there from Lucid, Lotus, UF themselves, and hosted by yours truly. That's on the 27th of April. We urge you to register for that. It's going to be a really good discussion. And that is it. It just remains for me to thank Freddie Holmes, my oh-so-able assistant, for this first CDN in review broadcast. We'll be back in a few months' time for a similar sort of deal where we're going to talk about what's happened and what's coming up. But for now, see you soon.